So Florida legislation, like Kelsey just talked about, how in 1990 Miami made this ordinance. It was stimulated by a pit bull type dog attacking a young girl. This is her mom in the picture who tried to interfere in the dog fight, and that she's holding the picture of her daughter. She did not die because we know of only 2 fatalities in Miami-Dade in the last 40 years, and one was in 1972 and one was in 2006. So there was a 90-day grace period. Sorry, did I say fatalities? Because it was fatalities. This is the 90-day grace period so that people could still keep their pit bull if they lived in Miami-Dade with their pit bull. But recently, there is a service dog loophole, which if you can prove that your dog is a service dog, you can keep your pit bull. It's against the ADA against the rights of the ADA citizens to, if you ask them for their proof of their animal, that's against the law. Proof of the breed, or proof of the fact that they're a service dog. So you can theoretically get around by just telling people that you have a service dog because no one's allowed to ask you for their certification. The problem with this, obviously, is that it illegitimizes the dogs that are actually service dogs, and it could be dangerous if you bring an animal to an area maybe where they are uncomfortable. And also therapy dogs, it's important to note, is not the same thing as service dogs. So people think that therapy dogs would be okay, so decreasing anxiety and things like that, and that's not protected by the ADA. So a lot of people in Miami are now doing this, though, calling their pit bull a service dog and getting away with it. And then there's a statute that was introduced in 2003 so that prohibited new breed-specific regulation in the state of Florida. So currently, only Miami-Dade County has BSL, and only Miami-Dade County will have BSL because of this ordinance. And it said that it would not change anything that happened prior to 1990. Obviously, that was being specific to Miami-Dade. And it does not prohibit any county from doing a dangerous dog law. That's fine, they support that, but it cannot be specific to breed. However, there have obviously been times where people are trying to oppose this, and Thurston and Hill in 2008 attempted to fight the 2003 statute, and they failed. They introduced it in December of 2008, and it failed in May of 2009. It was pretty quick for the failure. Those people are still in office, if you'd like to know who they are. And then in 2011, just recently, it's not BSL specifically, but it does remove the word dangerous dog from any animal that is used in a pit bull dog fighting ring or a bait dog. It will remove dangerous dog from their name so that county shelters can decide whether or not they want to adopt out the dog based on their own behavior evaluation. And that one is passing right now, but it hasn't passed all the way through. It's going through the committees. So the impact of BSL in shelters, the short-term time frame is that obviously at the time when you create this ban, you're going to have an increase in confiscations and euthanasia of a lot of pit bull type dogs, and it's going to be mass euthanasia. However, in the long term, when we look at Miami, because that's our only example in Florida, we actually see a decrease in pit bull intake, obviously, and euthanasia. So if you compare the 2 counties, and I can only get statistics for Miami-Dade in 2009, so I used their animal intake as well as their population of their county. And in Alachua County, I got the 2010 statistics as well as their population. So obviously Miami-Dade's been having a pit bull ban for 20 years. They intake over 20,000 dogs. 8,300 of them are euthanized, which is about 41% of the total. And about 800 of those 8,300 are pit bull type dogs. And so that would be 0.3 pit bulls for every 1,000 residents. And when you look at Alachua County, we have no pit bull restrictions. We intake about 3,400 dogs, euthanize about 35% of them, and 520 of them are pit bull type dogs. And that would be 2.1 pit bulls for every 1,000 residents. So even though in the beginning, obviously in 1989, 1990, there were a lot of euthanasias, we wonder if today it actually protects the pit bull. At least that can be an argument for BSL. So the actual risk of dog bites, we need to really look at that because if we want to shift away from BSL, we need to at least give the lawmakers something that they can do if they want to make a dangerous dog law. So what we really need to point out to them is that 97% of animals who bite are not neutered. And this is according to the National Canine Research Council. 84% are deemed abused or neglected, whether or not they're starved or heartworm positive or live outside and obviously are neglected by their owners. 78% are not house dogs. So these are guard dogs and dogs that are for protection. And they are not a dog that sleeps in your house, that has a bed, that goes to the vet regularly, that is part of your family as an element of your family. And then 25% of the fatal dog attacks involve chained dogs. So you want to look at regulation, obviously, with dogs on chains. And according to Best Friends Animal Sanctuary, which is obviously against breed-specific legislation, the potential cost, if you do one of their calculators, is $320,000 for Alachua County to do a BSL ban, breed-specific legislation. However, if you look at the breakdown of that, it's not necessarily something that I think would actually happen, because $33,000 of that is supposed to go towards DNA testing, and we know that Miami-Dade does not do that. They do it based on physical features. So you do have to break that down, but it's obviously a calculator that is built for people to fight BSL in their area. So the solutions. You can prohibit chained dogs. You can say they can only be on a chain certain times of the day, though that will require an animal control officer to probably sit outside their house for 3 hours because it's 3 consecutive hours in Alachua County. And then you can encourage spay-neuter, targeting the areas that have the most intake into shelters and that probably have had the most intake of bite cases. Or you can look at zip codes. High fines for reckless dog owners, because the real problem, obviously, we know is not the dog, it's the owner. So people who have had previous bite cases, or their dog has been loose and it's been called a nuisance dog, in certain cities across the country, they have a 2 rule, like if your dog is a nuisance twice, now it's mandatory that you're not allowed to register any more pets. Like, they can be that serious with this. So there are ways of looking at this. Obviously, if you're breaking the rules already, you're probably going to continue to break the rules. So you obviously need people to be able to back these laws up. Repeat offenders, they've restricted them from ever owning an animal again in that area. So you can try to make the law, but then you obviously need enforcement. And then legislation protection. So in the state of Florida, we're safe right now because we know that no other cities are allowed to enforce breed-specific legislation. And the prohibit of the chaining dogs, you can also make it so that they can't be within a certain fieldage of schools or nurseries or things like that, which is how some cities have done it. And that has, hopefully at least restricted some of the dogs that get loose and then get onto schoolyards.
All right, so I'm going to briefly talk about the role of the veterinarian in this BSL land. So they've already stated that in a veterinary office or grooming or shelter or anything of that sort, you need to have a sign that says, pit bulls are not allowed here. And as veterinarians, we have many obligations. We have a medical obligation, we have an educational obligation, and we also have an obligation for advocacy to spread what we know and to help make better enforcements. So what would happen, say, if a dog in Miami-Dade County is legally injured and goes into the clinic? The veterinarian still has to take care of that dog. What happens to the dog after? What happens to the owner after? This dog on the top was hit by a car on the I-95 in Miami-Dade County. Multiple surgeries, treated there, ended up in hiding in that clinic for over 4 months until it found a house outside of Dade County. So that's a risk for the staff that they're willing to take, and it's also cost to the clinic that they didn't need. The dog on the bottom there was actually shot by Miami-Dade law enforcement, taken to an emergency clinic in Miami-Dade County. What happens to the owners, what happens to the dog, what's the obligation of the staff. And also, not even lethally injured animals, but if you have a healthy acquired puppy coming into your clinic that needs distemper, needs parvo vaccines, you're going to turn it away. What's your obligation in terms of your medical stance in protecting the health of that dog and the risks that especially with the distemper outbreaks and everything happening in Miami-Dade. We also have an educational requirement. The individuals before us were saying that you need to tell the owner about the breed and educate it and what you need to make that dog healthy and balanced and emotionally stable. And as ironic as it is, as veterinarians, we're not only training the animals, we also have to train the people and the owners. So you need to train them in terms of how to handle the dog correctly, what you need to be safe, and also public safety and children, dog bite safety. Don't pet the dog while it's eating. Don't take away its toys. Don't approach a dog that you don't know without asking the owner. Don't approach trained dogs in other houses. And then we also have public education. We're veterinarians. We're very respected in the community and in general as a profession. And we should talk about the breed and what the characteristics are and misperceptions of it. And again, dog bite prevention. And then we also have state and national rules. So the AVMA has stated here that there is a dog bite problem, but we need better dog bite enforcement laws. You want to actually target the aggressive dogs. You don't want to target just the pit bull. You're not going to be effective. The FVMA has also stated here that there's a huge concern not only in terms of dog bites with BSL and misperceptions, but also the health of the animal and public health. Again, you're going to have people that are in hiding or they don't want to take their dog to the vet because they're scared it'll be taken away and they'll get fined and maybe even put in jail if they decide to try to keep that dog. And in terms of public health, what about things like rabies vaccinations? You have an entire slew of underground pit bulls in Miami-Dade that they can't get their rabies vaccinations. In Broward County Humane Society, you can't use their low-cost vaccination clinic unless you have a legal address in Broward County. So, you can't go to Dade County, you can't go to Broward County, you're gonna, and that's a state law. And conclusions.
So as you've heard, breed discriminatory laws threaten bully breed dogs, but specifically the pit bulls. As veterinary students, veterinarians, and animal advocates, we have a responsibility to educate ourselves on the issue and engage in the discussion. We can only hope that with more research and critical evaluation of the bans that are already in effect, that we can provide alternative remedies to increase public safety and simultaneously succeed in providing public education and acceptance of the pit bull type dog.